Hello and welcome to the Fit and Free podcast. This is a podcast for women who want it all, to feel strong and confident in their bodies, as well as enjoying a sneaky mug on a Friday night. I'm an exercise physiologist and sports nutritionist, here to teach you how to achieve your body goals without food and your body controlling your life. So let's jump in. Hello you guys, welcome back to another ep of the Fit and Free podcast. Guys, can you believe it? It's only 5 days left until Christmas. Who else is excited? I'm obviously so excited, but at the same time, I'm actually so sad because that means the festive season is like almost over. You have Christmas, then it's New Year's, and then all of a sudden it's January and it's all over. So a little bit low-key sad, but low-key super excited. For Christmas this year, we're actually going out to my grandma, who lives kind of in the middle of nowhere. She lives in the country in rural Victoria, so that will be fun. It will be just so nice to go and see all of the family, but it's going to be hot. It's going to be a very hot Christmas. So we're definitely going to have a few sneaky mugs, that's for sure. Anyway, coming into today's episode, I'm actually super excited about this one because I was actually a guest on someone else's podcast, and this was a fellow coach named Sheri who specializes in binge eating. And we had an amazing conversation talking all things nutrition, exercise, and mindset. We really spoke to the importance of creating balance in terms of having and cultivating a healthy relationship with food and being able to achieve a body composition goal. We're both on the same wavelength where we truly believe that you get to have both. You get to have the freedom in your life as well as the body that you are confident in. And this is really what we're going to be speaking to today. Mistakes people are making with their nutrition, how to cultivate a healthy relationship with food and what that actually looks like. Then we also speak to exercise as well, like what the best exercise is in combination with nutrition to achieve a body goal once and for good. So I hope you love the episode as much as me. So don't forget to send me a DM and tell me your biggest takeaway. I love hearing from you guys. And if you haven't yet taken a minute to leave a review on the podcast, if you love the episodes, please, if you could take 2 minutes of your day just to write a little review, because that does help me grow the podcast and get this out to as many people as possible. So it's greatly appreciated. I hope you all have the best Christmas and a happy new year, and let's get into the episode. Welcome, Laura. I am so excited to chat with you. I have followed you for such a long time, and your message around just genuinely having such cultivating your mindset, having a really healthy lifestyle and helping women has been something that has been an inspiration to myself, as well as something that I just want to sort of further share with our community. So, chatting to, essentially what you do, you're an exercise physiologist, a sports nutritionist, and do so many fun, high protein and delicious recipes. You're a content creator. And then obviously you're an online sort of fellow coach as well. That's all about helping women change their bodies through changing the way they approach their nutrition and their daily habits with movement and exercise, whilst also having a key focus on changing your mindset and perspective when it comes to achieving your goals. Laura, like I said, I just love your no BS approach to, knowing the numbers as well as actually having a plan in place, but then also leaning into enjoyment. And that resonates so much with my own message. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and be able to, pick your brain and chat to you further. So welcome. Thank you. What an intro. Love that. Love it. I honestly feel like, because obviously you've got a couple of different pages as well. So I literally, as I was sort of, coming up with questions and kind of getting clear as to how I wanted to chat, or sort of what I wanted to chat to you about today, I literally just dove into all of these different recipes that you post. And I was like, I need to start actually making my meals way more fun. Everyone knows this about me. I literally stick to the most basic meals. And it's until I start seeing more recipes online and I'm like, oh my God, I can make this delicious high protein pad thai. Of course I want to make that. So thank you for all the incredible content that you do give, because I feel like even from my own perspective, you have literally just given me this huge influx of inspiration when it comes to food. So I love it. So Laura, if you can tell us a bit about who you are and what you do in the online space, and maybe we'll just start there together. Yes. I don't know. You pretty covered everything. in your little intro there. But so, hello, my name's Laura, for everyone listening. I am a full-time foodie, if you haven't seen my Fit Foodie recipes already. I love going out for a margarita. I love going to a cafe on a Saturday morning. I love, love, love to travel. And like, that's what I do in my spare time. But as a profession, I am an exercise phys and a sports nutritionist. And I've really niched down and specialized in helping women achieve their body composition goal whilst healing their relationship at the same time. Like, I truly believe that we can absolutely have both. And there's so many things online where it's like, oh, all intuitive eating, like just, love your body now, not like, just love yourself. Versus like you can go fully into like the bodybuilder world of like sports nutrition where it's like really calculated and all the things. Well, I truly believe that we can take elements from both sides, build a healthy relationship with this food whilst still looking good and feeling confident within our bodies. So that's kind of what I do.
Laura, I love it so much. That's exactly what I am all about. And I completely can resonate with that, right? Especially in the online world, you can see so much on one side of the spectrum, which is that bodybuilder, like, chicken and brock kind of thing. And then on the other side, it being very hashtag. And again, I want to almost like get into this with you as well around like hashtag food freedom, like kind of the stereotype of food freedom, which is kind of like eat whatever you want, like almost like no guidelines, nothing, as opposed to going, actually, there's this beautiful pocket right in the middle where you can genuinely have kind of like a gentle structure, a clearer plan, and still work in all the fun foods that you want while still being able to achieve your goals without there being this sense of restriction or off-limit foods or labels and things like that. You can find this really nice pocket. And I think not only obviously your coaching, but then also all the recipes that you do really, really speak to that and actually help educate women to be able to find like that golden pocket right in the center. And I think, that's where we can see so many, essentially the whole diet industry and I think the health and fitness industry to a certain degree can feel quite blurry and quite confusing for a lot of women that are trying to achieve their body composition goals and change their physiques, but we're then being sold lots of diets and supplements and all of this stuff when really, like, you can come back to the sort of the key fundamentals and get it right and heal that relationship with food.
Absolutely. And it's the biggest thing that so many people are missing and they don't even realize it. So
that's such a good point. Yeah, so many people don't even realize it. They don't know that there is this golden pocket right in the middle. And I think it takes a lot of people a long time to find that. And I think that's obviously, why you and I are in this space. And when it genuinely comes from a place of, you want to educate in that space and actually show people, but bring people into the light, really. So yeah, love that so much. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what brought you into this space? Where does your sort of passion for this lie or sort of come from?
Yeah, so it all came from the fact that I struggled with my body image for a good solid 5 years, actually, like, let's say 18 years of my life. Like, I've always had disordered eating patterns. I had never been confident within myself. And because of that, my nutrition and exercise was a reflection of ultimately my self-worth. Like, I had no confidence. My self-worth was so low, and then I was constantly looking for that external validation, and I was always trying to find that through my body needing to look a certain way. So that is ultimately why I got into this work, because it's not necessarily about the food, but it's mostly about building our worth and being able to learn how to detach our worth from our body so that we can start fueling our body correctly and start exercising in a way that makes us feel strong and powerful. And when we get that all in alignment, then our body composition changes without even having really to do anything. So that is why I got into it, is because I know how it feels for your life truly to be controlled by your body and by food.
Absolutely. I love that reflection so much, because I think, when we sort of just come at our physique from that perspective of, I just need to do this diet to get this body, we're kind of bypassing the whole real, what we want our sort of intention to be, which is actually genuine self-care. Like, actually, how do I take care of myself? And I think that's where you actually have to build that sense of self-worth where you're actually deserving of having a body that feels good, that genuinely you feel comfortable in, that yes, maybe looks the way that you want it to look, but also that you're actually like managing yourself and taking care of yourself. When it comes from that place, you actually don't have to battle your body, you actually get to take care of, and that's where our physique goals can then come to fruition. I speak about this so much with my girls about, you know, when weight loss, let's say, or fat loss is a goal, being able to, you're not putting it on the back burner by sort of moving the sort of it off to the side a little bit. You're actually, by focusing on all the controllables and the variables that are actually going to impact that, by focusing on the genuine taking care of yourself, that happens naturally. That is an outcome of all the things that you are actually controlling, as opposed to trying to battle that to begin with.
Absolutely. And I love that so much. And that's exactly the same in my world as well. It's like we always focus on making sure that we're focusing on the things that actually matter rather than the outcome goal. Like, yes, we're absolutely caring about body recomp. Like that's always in the back of our mind, but we're able to have that detachment from it and not being, you know, having that needy energy and needing to have that to be ultimately happy or ultimately enough. But it's about, you know, focusing on the controllables, like you said, what we can control every single day in order to achieve that. And like the other thing in with all of that is like people get so fixated on wanting to look a certain way and they forget about their health. And like I'm such an advocate for this because like I lost my period for 3 years. And during that time, like I didn't give a fuck about my health. It was all about I needed to be skinny, I needed to be small, I needed to be X. But at the same time, I didn't have my period. I had no energy. I was an irritable bitch. Wasn't paying attention to it. So that's the other thing. It's like, yeah, we need to cultivate self-respect and actually focus on our health as well as achieving the body goal.
100%. And I think, yeah, absolutely, that speaks to, yeah, that sense of self-worth and respect. When it's actually, when you put that first, everything else can follow. I think something else that just came to mind there as well is that, you know, people think that they want to be able to control their weight, right? They want to be able to feel like they're in control of that, when you actually realize that like that's actually something that you can influence. But you actually being able to, like, let's say for instance, waking up tomorrow and I was like, tell me exactly what you're going to weigh. You have no freaking idea. You might gauge, but you have no idea. Your body's going to do its thing. So there's an element of you're never going to be fully in control of that number. So why not then focus your attention on the variables that you actually can control, that are not only going to make you physically healthier, let's say, but also mentally and emotionally, you're genuinely taking care of yourself. That number is going to do its thing, and it's naturally going to come into alignment based off of everything else that you're actually doing as well. Like it's actually going to be an outcome of you taking good care of yourself. And when you prioritize yourself, that's where, yeah, if I could teach anyone that, like anything, anyone, anything, it would be that. Stop trying to control that and actually focus on what you can control and prioritize the things that you know you need to prioritize. That's going to happen naturally. So absolutely love that. What would you say? Because I know, right, there's so many people listening that are wanting, you know, weight loss. Obviously, I'm like playing very big in the binge eating space and emotional eating space. So a lot of people, right, they've been sort of struggling with their relationship with food and have felt like they're battling essentially their body for quite some time. So they're in that sort of restrictive standpoint as well. What would you say to someone who kind of like is initially starting out and they're, you know, maybe they've just been on a very strict diet for a long time? What would you say would be something that you'd want to kind of like teach someone straight off the bat about how to approach maybe their goals of losing weight or just changing the way their body looks? What would be something that you would want to sort of teach them straight off the bat as to how to approach that? What would you suggest?
Oh, that's such a good question because there's so many things. But at the end of the day, like my first thing is always going to be like education, right? Like education on like actual nutrition. Like once you understand what carbs are and what carbs actually do for the body, they no longer become this scary thing. They no longer become this, oh my God, if I eat this, I'm going to get fat. It's like, well, I now know that I have to eat, you know, 200 grams of carbohydrates every single day. And if I don't eat them, that is the reason why I'm binge eating. That is the reason why I've got low energy. That is the reason why I'm not seeing weight loss ultimately. So I think that is like such an important piece that, you know, instead of focusing on going to try and stick to another diet, first start off with mastering the basics, because that's what people are not willing to do. They're not willing to do the, like, at the end of the day, it's like it's harder to actually learn the skill instead of like, you know, just copying and pasting and sticking to something. Like a deeper level of understanding versus, oh, I'm just going to copy this and be strict is like, that's easier than actually understanding how to fuel your body correctly.
100%. And so what would you say? Because I know that there's probably gonna be someone listening that's like, oh, but Laura, like carbs just don't work with my body. Every time I eat carbs, I gain weight. Like carbs, I have to be on keto. What would you say to that thought?
Well, first of all, like I will never shame anyone or judge anyone in the way that they bring anything to the table. Absolutely. Because what we have to remember is that everything we know is based off conditioning. Like we've learned that carbs are bad. So if we think that, then it's like, okay, cool. Where did you learn that? Like who taught you that? And that's the first thing that I will always ask someone. It's like, where did you get that information from? Like, was that from an influencer that told you to drink a green juice for breakfast and then you're going to get a flat stomach? Or was that from the National Australian Guidelines, who have like so much evidence base behind it that's actually telling you to eat 6 serves of carbs a day? So like, let's understand why we're having these thoughts and where they're coming from. What's the undercurrent? What's the ultimately the limiting belief on why you think it's bad? Like if you're going to gain weight, okay, why? Let's uncover that. So therefore we can move forward appropriately and like distinguish, like, is this a limiting belief? Is this actually true? Or is this something that I've just told myself repeatedly because that's what I've learned to be true in that moment?
Beautifully said. Absolutely. And I think that's where, yeah, what sort of came to mind there was that, it's about bringing awareness to why am I doing what it is that I'm doing and being willing to question. And I think a lot of people sort of struggle with that sometimes because they don't maybe want to see, oh, I've been sort of doing this for so long. It's almost like I have to make it work. So there's an element of like, there's a bit of certainty in doing and repeating the same thing over and over, as opposed to being like, okay, hold on, what I'm doing right now may not be working. So actually, how can I just make sure that I bring awareness to that and go, what would it look like if I actually did have some carbs? Like, is there a possibility here that actually by having that, like my enjoyment of food and my behaviors can actually start, coming into a little bit of alignment there as well. So really, really love that. Like, I think this is also where I'd love to get your thoughts around this, because I know obviously I feel like, we kind of mentioned those two camps before about, kind of let's call it the bodybuilding space, let's say, where there's sort of, very strict on macros and calories, which I think is, the classic sort of diet approach of, if I want to lose weight, if I want to change my body, if I want to, get toned, let's say, like we'll use that vocab, we almost have to track, right? We need MyFitnessPal. Then there's the other camp, which is very, again, hashtag food freedom, of just very, and when I say that, guys, like really, the concept of food freedom being, I can have whatever it is that I want, whenever I want, no limits, no guidelines, like, which is something that a lot of people fear, right, when they think about food freedom, I think. But if we think about that sort of, not tracking anything and just going intuitively, where do you sit in terms of what would be the best approach for someone that right now is maybe, has been on a diet for some time, they want to stop thinking about calories as much? How do they navigate that? Where is your suggestion of how to approach the almost like the bit of the mess? How can we sort of have a bit of clarity around what's the best way to approach that when you may not want to track for the rest of your life, but you also don't want to feel restricted?
Yeah, great question. And this is something that I like work with on a daily basis. It's so many women are coming to me and they've just got this absolute obsession over MyFitnessPal. And so first of all, I again always going back to that awareness piece. It's like, okay, why? What is that obsession piece, and where is that actually coming from? What are you actually afraid of? Because like we know it's never about the obsession of MyFitnessPal. It's what we're making that mean about ourselves. So like if I don't track perfectly, then what is actually going to happen? Therefore, I'm fucking afraid that I'm going to lose control. I'm so afraid that I'm going to overeat. I'm so afraid that I'm going to gain weight. So that's the first piece in all of this, is understanding the deeper why and understanding the actual root cause of the problem, not the fact that it's like, just a obsession. Like that's our symptom, say, and then we have to explore that. And that's why I think coaching is so powerful. It's because like, you can, you want to stop tracking and then you can follow like a different thing. Maybe it's like a meal plan, but then like you'll still have that same pattern and you'll still have that same behavior when you don't have the meal plan anymore, because there's the lack of, you lose control, you don't have that sense of control, say, and then, the fear of gaining weight always comes back in. So like if this is you, like my first question, like I will always ask, is just reflect on like, what is that obsession? Like why is that happening? And then how can you use the knowledge that you have gained through tracking and apply that to balancing your plate? like I'm huge on portion sizes, right? And if you've tracked, you've got a baseline of nutritional knowledge. Like you're not a beginner, you know what a carbohydrate is, you know what a fat is, and you know what a protein is. So now let's utilize this knowledge and start building a healthy plate with the correct portion sizes, like quarter of a plate protein, quarter of a plate carbs, half veggies, some size of fat, a bit more carbohydrate, maybe if you're an active female. Like, God, I need more than a quarter of a plate of carbs. And then ultimately what it really comes down to is overcoming that fear of, fear of weight gain and learning how to fucking trust yourself. That's what it really comes down to. If you can't trust your hunger and fullness cues, there is no way that you're going to be able to let go of tracking, because there is no element of trust. So that's a skill that you also work on, learning how to trust your hunger and fullness cues. Obviously that's like a whole thing, but that's what I would really recommend doing.
Oh, I love this so much. Absolutely. I'm so aligned with this. Because I think, yeah, definitely speaking to that concept there of trust. Oftentimes people don't trust themselves because they have maybe been on a diet for so long, and then every single time they've tried, they might have, they've almost labeled it as failing because they then feel out of control. But oftentimes what they've tried is in some way still quite restrictive. It's they're still cutting out certain things, or they're not eating when they're actually hungry. They're trying to push past their hunger. So it's not actually the balance and the portion sizes that they can't trust. It's that you're not addressing the other pillars that you also need to have in place, which means that every time that you have, again, tried, you're almost sort of setting yourself up for a bit of a fall there, because you're putting yourself in a wobbly situation, but it's not actually the portion sizes or that part that you need to work on. It's the other things as well. So I think, right, if we're thinking sort of digging a little bit deeper into that concept there, so it sounds as though, and this is sort of a big part of why I love your messaging so much, because you are about yes, knowing the numbers and having that plan in place, but then also not obsessing about that. So what would your suggestion be for someone that's like, look, I've been on a diet for a long time. I don't want to be obsessive about the calories or the numbers, but I also want to make sure that I'm eating the right amounts. Would you suggest going straight into portion sizes, or would you suggest actually tracking for a little bit? Does it sort of depend? What would you sort of recommend for someone?
Yeah, well, I'll always go, it depends, right? And this is something that I see huge in the coaching industry, is that people have their one method and it worked for them, so therefore that's what they teach. And I see it all the time. So many clients come to me and they're like, oh my God, this person made me track, and this is the only thing that I could do, and then I couldn't stick to it. And like what you already said, it's they make it mean that it's them, that they're the problem, that they lack willpower, that they lack discipline, but yet it was just not the right strategy for that person. So it depends. I would probably, if there is a big obsession in and around tracking, I will always try to wean someone off it and build trust back with just portion sizes and building trust with their hunger and fullness cues and eating for satisfaction and all of the things. And then, like I always said, it's you have to look at the attachment to it. If you've got an emotion about something, that means you're attached to it in some way. So that's why we have to practice that in order to move through it.
Yeah, I love that so much. So would you suggest then, let's say someone was quite, let's say, obsessive with their tracking, would you say that the first thing would be, getting obviously your numbers right, getting clear on, obviously, I think the sort of first step there is getting clear on what your goals are, then understanding the numbers, understanding then what that looks like in terms of the structure of your day, and then really leaning into that self-trust and weaning yourself off it, and really then building that trust of, hold on, when I don't plug this exact same meal that I have every single day for lunch, when I don't plug it in to my fitness pal, wow, nothing changes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always an element of control within the process of doing it, because otherwise it feels like a fucking rocking shit for the person, and they're like, oh my God.
100%. I love that so much. Yeah, I love that, because I think that's where, right, it's almost like people try and start something new and they can shock themselves into trying something completely different, as opposed to going, it's okay that you have done something for so long that feels comfortable for you. And then it's also giving yourself permission to maybe, want to try a different thing, but you can find that nice bridge between the two. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, how am I ever going to stop tracking? Just try that little by little to go, okay, the meal that I keep plugging in every single day, what would it look like if I actually didn't track that? And I actually just looked at, I know what a tablespoon of peanut butter looks like, and maybe I actually don't weigh this one out, and I actually just try and, bit by bit, trust that when you do that, nothing bad's going to happen. And then when you realize nothing bad has happened, oh wow, right, you've built that. I always call it like our wall of self-trust, and every single little thing that we do like that, it's a brick, and we build up this really big wall bit by bit by bit, so that whenever you do have this wobbly moment, you can lean on that and actually be like, hold on, I've got this, everything's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about building evidence in safety that it is okay to do it. And I love that analogy so much because it's absolutely true. Like, we can sit here and talk about it all like till the cows come home, but being successful is about doing the thing. And it's actually about not tracking the meal and actually then creating that safety and then being like, oh, this is actually okay. But like, we don't have that unless we, take the scary, messy action. So
I love that so much, the scary, messy action. Absolutely. I think, right, that sort of leads me to my next question around, what do you sort of see being a really big roadblock for women when it does come to almost like that follow through piece, right? About like when someone knows what it is that they need to do, but maybe they're quite motivated and they really want to change, whether that looks like healing their relationship with food, or even just like being able to like stick to this like new, and I almost like hate that terminology of like sticking to a plan, but sticking to this new plan of like, this is my new phase of life, I'm actually really going to prioritize myself. What would you say to someone that's really struggling to do that follow through and have that grit? And oftentimes I kind of see this part being people fearing like restriction, or they fear just essentially following anything new and fearing failure. What would be your suggestion around that, about how to actually follow through a little better?
Yeah, that's a good one, because like that is ultimately why people are not successful with their diet, or like a fat loss phase, say, or a body recomp phase. It's because they're not able to sit through the discomfort of what it actually takes to achieve it. And I think one of the biggest things is like mindset blocks that people don't realize that's going on. So things like, if you're running from the undercurrent of perfectionism, like say, oh, I didn't track this perfectly, so I'm not going to track the rest of the day, and I'm just going to say it doesn't matter anymore and just eat whatever the fuck I want. Or it's the classic, well, perfect Monday to Friday and then just blow out on the weekends. Right? It's these things ultimately are leading to self-sabotage. So our perfectionism is leading to the sabotage, which is leading to people not being successful with their goals. So it's like, that's one of the biggest roadblocks, is actually understanding your own patterns, whether that's a perfection pattern, whether that's a control. I have to have this all in control. If I'm not in control, then it's not going to work. If it's like a fear of failure thing, if it's a fear of, lack of self-trust, like these are the like blind spots. It's say what they're called is like, which is ultimately causing that self-sabotage, which is leading people not to reach their goals. The other thing I wanted to say on this one is people are not willing to put in the time that it actually takes. And this is the thing, people get caught up with distraction, people get caught up in not seeing results fast enough, and then they'll jump to something else, which I just call shiny object syndrome. I'm like, babe, like, how long did it take you to finish your degree? You're not going to grow your glutes in 12 weeks. And I'm sorry, but it doesn't happen that way. And people are not willing to and again, but we have to understand why. It's like, because we have so much conditioning to 12-week diets, lose 10 kilos in 12 weeks. So like, of course, like that's our expectation because that's what we've learned. So like undoing that conditioning as well is a huge piece in becoming successful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I really can resonate with so many of the points that you just mentioned. I think, key sort of pull out from that was, being able to see your own patterns and learn about, oh yeah, like this is actually the undercurrent of my behavior and where my self-sabotage is popping in, is so, so crucial. And I think that's really where, you, being a coach to your girls, and same goes for myself. Like that's really, I see that as a huge part of like the job, right? It's like, a lot of people, they feel like, I know what it is that I need to do, right? So you've got people that are, they're coming from a place of being quite uneducated and they're wanting to actually learn. And then you have a lot of people that know what it is that they need to do, but they can't quite follow through on it. That's really where, again, having a coach that can actually, shine a torch on the blind spots to help you step through that and actually break through from that pattern can literally be the most pivotal thing. So yeah, I think that's such a key highlight. And I think as well, right, like being able to something that you just mentioned there around that sort of like follow through piece, right? When we can realize that like we do have that perfectionist mindset. Actually, maybe I'll sort of ask you a little bit about that in terms of actually sort of letting go of that perfectionist mindset. What would you say? Because I think that's something that a lot of women struggle with.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations as to how to kind of like let go a little bit from that? Because I think we sort of see that pattern, right? Of like the Monday to Friday is perfect. I'm on track. And then it gets to Friday night and someone has an urge to just like hit the fucker button is what I call it. And they almost have to feel like they're like white knuckling it. And then as soon as they have like a banana, they're like, oh my God, I'm screwed up. I'm like, I'm off track and whatever. When really there needs to be that element of actually being a little bit agile. How would you say would be like, or what would you say would be the first sort of couple of steps someone could do to try and let go of that perfectionist mindset?
Yeah, so we have to look at our rules. Like if you eat the banana and that is your rule, you fucked up and you've gone over your calories, therefore you've broken your rule and you're no longer perfect. That's why that perfectionism mindset is playing out. So what we have to do is we have to look at every single rule and restriction that we have in on our diet, in on our food, and in on our beliefs. And one of the biggest things that I teach in building my definition on quote unquote building a healthy relationship with food is learning how to treat every single day the same, regardless if it's a Monday, regardless if you're on holidays, regardless if you're wherever, right? Like we have to learn how to treat every single day the same. And then we have to learn how to get rid of the rules. So for example, like if you go over your calories by 100, instead of making that mean that, oh, I'm not perfect, that's not good enough, what that means is I've just eaten an extra 100 calories. And that's okay. Like that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's because we have that rule that it's wrong that we make it wrong. So that's why it's like we have to learn how to reframe how we think and how we feel about food basically, so that then we can let go of that perfection thinking. And then of course, like just building evidence in terms of like how many people do you know who are not perfect every single day that are getting fucking amazing results. Like this is why I love to use comparison in such a healthy way, because it's like, well, if it's possible for them, it's absolutely possible for me as well. There's nothing, I'm not special. Like, let's be real for a minute. And utilizing that in front of us, it's like, well, it doesn't have to be perfect. And looking back on past experiences in your life, well, how many times have you not gotten it perfectly, but you've still seen success?
Absolutely. I love that so much. I love what you just said about comparison actually being something that can be quite fruitful and actually can be quite helpful to go, hold on. Yes, also have a bit of a take on comparison in the sense of, even when you look at someone and you're like, I want to be like them, there's also an element of like, you can choose to use comparison and use it as there's obviously something within them that I actually really like and that I actually really want to be like or emulate. And that can actually be quite an inspirational thing. But then also the comparison that you were just speaking to about going, hold on, that person is probably not getting every single thing right. They're probably not finding every single thing easy, but we're only viewing, again, this is the thing with social media, right? We only view such a, highlight reel. We don't see everything else. We don't see the extra 100-calorie banana that someone else did have. And we're just seeing, the simple day on a plate and going, oh, that was so easy for them. Why is it not so easy for me? Just kind of going back to those rules. I love what you just said about like, focusing on reframing them and actually, almost like recreating new rules of like, if I go over 100 calories, that does not actually mean that I'm off track. And that's really where I do focus so much with my girls on like the ranges. And I think, people always speak to like targets, but it's also going, what if you actually gave yourself like 2000 to 2100? And it's like actually going, as long as you fall somewhere within that, and even then, like, having like some buffers around that, let's say on the weekend, if you actually make the rule, and I make this rule for myself, it's like, if I am actually, in a little bit more of like a tracking phase, for instance, going, as long as I fall within this, I'm actually going to equal that as success. And if I, I'm a little bit below or I'm a little bit above, my rule is that I'm not off track in any way if I choose to have an extra snack, because if I choose to have that and it's intentional and I've been curious with myself and I've gone, yeah, I actually really want to do this. Or even if I haven't and it's a mindless moment, like being able to go, that's actually okay. I'm human. I don't get everything perfectly right all the time. Yeah. The rule is that's actually okay. It doesn't mean that I'm undisciplined or inconsistent person. I don't have to make it mean as much as we tend to make things mean, right? We graft on all of these rules and meanings onto things about who it is that we are and what we're able to achieve, when in reality, sometimes the banana is just the banana and everything's fine.
Yeah, I love that. Because at the end of the day, perfectionism just comes down to protecting ourselves from failure. That's where perfectionism comes from. It's a protection mechanism of the ego to being like, well, if you just go, well, fuck it, that means you're protecting yourself from the failure of what you would experience if that was to be true. So that's what we have to realize. It's like, well, let's bring that into our awareness, that our perfectionism comes from a place of we really fucking care. Like we really care and we really want to achieve something. So let's bring in the compassion piece instead of falling down into that shame spiral of being all the reasons why you're not good enough because you weren't perfect. Why don't we come in with curiosity and compassion to be like, oh, I care so much right now. Like, how can I utilize this blip in this moment as a learning tool? Like, pat myself on the back, give myself a hug and being like, you're okay, you're not failing, you're fine, you just had an extra 100 calories. Let's explore why. Like, why did you do that? Let's come in with curiosity and being like, are you actually not eating enough? Like, did you do more exercise? You know, like, let's, you know, like defuse the bomb in a really, really healthy and more so taking responsibility way instead of making it all the reasons why we're shit.
Oh, 100%. I like, yeah, defusing the bomb. I love that. And everything that you just said, I'm like, this is exactly why I want to do on this podcast, because your mindset I resonate with so, so much. And I think what you just said about like, you know, taking things, like my sort of take on that is like feelings are feedback, right? Feelings can be feedback, and being able to go,
when you let them.
yeah, exactly. And actually going, hold on. So I'm feeling a sense of shame, guilt, or regret. Okay, this is, you know, let's unpack that. Let's defuse that. Let's actually sort through that. What is truth, and also what is just maybe like conditioning of past, you know, diet rules and things that might be popping up there. But also, is there an element within this of, you know, is this feedback for me that something actually within that decision actually felt a little bit misaligned, right? And okay, is it because I wasn't intentional? Is it because I didn't take a pause? Is it because I, you know, had a plan as to how today was going to go and it's gone, you know, a little bit askew? Or, you know, let's get curious and actually go, this is feedback showing me that this is really important to me. And instead of judging the fact that I feel these things at all and that I haven't had this perfect day, can I actually take this as like, okay, cool. So do I need to actually add an additional snack in this moment because this happens every single day and I, you know, this is behavior I don't want to stop. I just do want to stop, sorry, or I want to be more intentional. Can I actually learn, navigate, adapt, and evolve so that this actually becomes less of a problem and it becomes something that I actually solve, right? And I think that when we speak to like failure, it's like actually being willing to, like, you know, you going off track is not failure if you look at it as like, this is an opportunity for me to learn about myself, about what actually is going to be the best approach for me moving forward based on how I am, based on my patterns, based on the way that I like to eat, based on my energy levels, based on my activity levels, like genuinely getting curious as to how can I, again, come back to self-management and really help myself through these moments so that whatever your goal is, whatever your plan is, you can actually stay really aligned and on track. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like building the skill, it is a skill. And it took me a long time to be able to do it, to look at my mistakes as a lesson. God, it was hard, but it was one of the greatest things that I've ever been able to do for myself. Sorry. It's like my coach says, like, sometimes you need a pebble to be thrown at you. Sometimes you need a boulder before you'll start listening. But eventually you start to tune into it and it helps so much.
Oh, love that. Yeah. I think something that you actually mentioned earlier that sort of relates to this as well is this piece around, like practicing that skill and then also being patient, right? Being patient and being willing to, you know, the whole concept of failing forward. It's being, and again, like I use that word failure. I don't like that word failure, but I feel like a lot of people will be able to resonate with that. Being able to, you know, find things challenging and putting in the practice and actually then also being patient and waiting for those results. You know, this is where I think with our relationship with food, right, it hasn't taken us 2 seconds to get into a little bit of a tiff with ourselves and with our bodies. You know, oftentimes it's years of being on diets or trying to be smaller and trying to lose weight and being then bombarded with discover pages and TikToks of all these different things. It is confusing. It is really confusing. And so being willing to give yourself time to actually heal that relationship with food. And something I always tell my girls is like, it's a relationship, right? It's like literally if you go into a relationship with anyone else in your life, it's not going to be this like, amazing marriage in 2 seconds and then this marriage is incredible. Relationships take time, they take effort, they take, attention and awareness and, actually understanding that person. So why are we so unwilling to give our food and our, the journey to achieve our goals and our, our relationship with ourselves and with food? Why are we not willing to give it the same attention and time and patience and effort? Because if we actually looked at it as this sacred thing, we would actually really prioritize it and be willing to put, let's say, weight loss way on this back burner for a second and actually then prioritize the self-care and the self-management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that so much.
So in saying that, in terms of people sort of creating, I kind of want to like veer this now into like setting really realistic goals, because I think that also then ties a little bit into that patience piece, right? When someone has really, goals that are putting a lot of pressure on themselves, and I'm going to guess you might have girls that also come to you being like, I want to lose 10 kilos in 10 weeks, and this is my goal. How do you sort of remove a bit of that pressure sometimes when someone really does come in hot and heavy and they're super motivated? Do you have any suggestions as to how someone can actually really set some realistic goals and take that pressure off so that they actually can succeed a bit easier?
Yeah, when it comes to goals, like I do love goals, absolutely. But my interpretation of goals is not necessarily about the goal itself, but it's like, because when you think about it, like you set a goal because you want to achieve something, right? And then, okay, cool. So you do these things in order to achieve the goal. Ultimately, it's not necessarily the goal that we want. It's actually who we need to become in order to achieve that goal. So that's like my biggest thing with goal setting is like, where are you not showing up in your life to be that version? Because if you want to, you want to change your body composition, you want to build muscle, you want to lose fat, yet you can't keep promises to yourself, you're not consistent, you're not a committed person, forget it. You're not going to be able to do it. So it's like, well, yes, amazing. Like, let's set these amazing goals, but like, let's really look at how you are living and leading your life every single freaking day, the decisions that you're making, the consistency of, your nutrition, your meal planning, your going to the gym, going for, a walk or whatever that may look like. Like, this is the stuff that we have to look at. Who are you being? What do you have to let go of in order to become this next level version of yourself?
I love that so much. And I think, right, this is where I can already hear people's little brains peeing sometimes, right? Where it's like, if we think, well, like that's all good and well, but also I just want to lose the weight first and then I'll do all of that, right? And it's like, this is where people, will, let's say, go on these really harsh diets and they'll get, like, let's say that you've lost 10 kilos, 10 weeks and you're super stoked. What do we then tend to notice, right? As soon as you go back to any kind of normality, because your normality, your standards of yourself, how you live your life and your self-worth and everything is because you actually haven't built up you into becoming someone that can hold that, you will naturally revert back. And I think this is where people need to start realizing that, exactly as you mentioned, the end goal is not the weight loss. The end goal is like who you are. And I use weight loss, guys, because I know, right, that's a huge priority for so many people. But obviously it could literally just be like you maintaining your weight and your current physique without the yo-yo dieting, right? Could be that as well. But about going, like, genuinely, the goal is, who do you want to be? Yes, there's obviously the physical component, but then looking at like the mental and emotional version of you, like, who do you actually want to be? How do you want to be living your life? And how can we get you to start showing up as that now? Because everything else will follow. Your physical body will follow. If you're actually eating well and nourishing your mind and managing your emotions, and you're doing all this stuff because you're actually transforming you, not only will you be able to achieve the goals that you have, but also you'll be able to hold yourself there. It won't be this yo-yoing, difficult restriction. You'll actually be able to hold yourself because you'll know the standards by which you want to live.
Yeah, it's this whole piece, right, of conditional living. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I've lost the weight. I'll be happy when I'm a size 8. So that's where their attention goes. And what people do is they just try and change their behavior in terms of, they try the diets, like you said, and then just expect to be able to maintain it. But if you want to maintain it, you actually have to change what's actually driving your behavior. And what's driving your behavior is your beliefs, your values, the way that you're living your life. And if you're not changing your beliefs, there is no way that you're going to be able to have a sustainable result, because you're just going to fall back into your old conditioning and your old patterns. So yes, of course, the nutritional strategy and the exercise program is so important. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, of course, we need to making sure we've got the right macros, got the right calories, you know, doing the right type of exercise. But like, if we're not looking at our beliefs that ultimately drive the behavior, then good luck sticking and maintaining that goal long term.
Oh, beautifully said. Yep. And I have this whole analogy, right, about I'm a big analogy person. Everyone listening will
I
be
love
like,
that.
I literally, when I pull up these,
to.
sometimes they're great. And then also sometimes they make no sense. And I'm like, yep, guys, I know that makes no sense. But this one is one that does make sense. I have this analogy around like a train, right? And you've got 3 carriages. You've got the first one, the second one, and the third one. And they represent our mindset, our emotional regulation, and then our habits and behaviors. Yeah. And we tend to try and focus on the third train and try and change the third train and where it's going. But, and this is where people be like, I'm just going to do this. I need more discipline. I need to just stick to this plan. But they're not addressing that it's being pulled by your emotional state and, you know, your emotions and a big part of like who you are. And then also your mindset and your thoughts, your beliefs, all your values, all of that. And so, you know, you can try all you want to change that third one, and maybe you'll be able to like low key push it to the left or right, but it's being pulled by your emotional state and your mindset. So if you're actually thinking as the conductor of this train, how can I actually steer my mindset, number one, left and right, which is then going to shift my emotional state, which is then going to shift my behaviors. Your behaviors of the third carriage will always fall in alignment with your emotional state and your mindset. So when you get those 2 carriages right, and when you're dictating as the driver, naturally your behavior is going to fall in line. Right. So focus on the things that are like the key fundamental stuff. Everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. Love it.
That being said, if we're sort of chatting to coming back to this whole concept of goals and our habits and behaviors, what would you say are kind of like the biggest roadblocks that you tend to notice women come up against when it does come to, let's say, you know, they're a month or 6 weeks into their journeys and they're like, you know, they're healing their relationship with food, feeling really good. Is there sort of like a common thread that you tend to notice that people, I guess, sort of the roadblocks that people hit where it's like, you know, a lack of motivation, or they've like lost their momentum and they've started to see results and they're kind of maybe a bit impatient? What would you say are kind of like the biggest roadblocks that you tend to notice around that period of time where it's a bit of, you know, what would be the term, almost a bit stagnant, right? What would you say is sort of the key things that you notice, and how can we try and move past those slumps?
Yeah, I love that. I call it like the 6-week dip.
Oh, really?
I've got like an intentional part of my coaching program where it's like we address this exact thing, because it's so common. Like the motivation wears off and then it comes down to you actually being committed to the goal. And what I see a lot of the time, it's people are like trying to utilize this motivation long term where actually they just need to learn how to be committed, because there's a difference between commitment and saying you're going to do something, right? So it's like, okay, teaching people that, again, I sound like a broken record when I always go on about this, but it's like consistency always fucking wins, and people are not willing to put in the time. It's because it's like, it's the time piece. So therefore, how can we start enjoying the process? And I think a really big thing on this is learning how to detach from the outcome and needing it in a certain time frame is huge, because if we're needing it to be in a certain time, if we need it in 12 weeks, it's going to put a lot of pressure on us during the, oh my God, it's week 6 and I'm only here. And then, which ultimately a lot of the time falls into like a self-sabotaging pattern of like, well, I'm never going to be successful, blah, 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 all the stories that come up. So it's really, really important to be able to detach from the time, and most importantly, operating from a place of trusting that it's possible for me. And that can be hard for a lot of women because they've struggled so long with not seeing results. So it's like, well, I don't have the evidence that it's not possible for me. So it is hard to build that. So there's a lot of compassion and empathy in that space, but it's learning how to, you know, celebrate the small wins day to day. And like, you know, as an example, it's like I did some goblet squats in the gym this morning, and like I always record myself so I have that feedback, and my form looks so much better than it did like 6 months ago. And it's like, that's the shit that we need to be focusing on. It's like those things, they might be really small, but they're the things that are actually going to get us to our goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love this so much because, and I kind of call this like metrics of success, right? We tend to look at one metric and literally be like, has my scale weight gone down? And that is the only metric that people focus on, as opposed to going, hold on, that's literally like maybe, one of 20 metrics that you want to be looking at. How is your mood? How is your form? How is your energy? How is your relationships? How's your sex life? How's your, like, literally having a look holistically, like, are you actually enjoying who it is that you're becoming? Yeah. And how can we allow that to give you that sense of like instant gratification almost, and dopamine of like, I'm actually feeling way better. Awesome. Can we actually lean on that and wait for that final 20th metric to come into place? As opposed to then when we actually compare that to the self-sabotaging loop that we notice can happen, going, okay, yeah, but you could give up the other 19 where you're actually, progressing beautifully. Yeah, sure, we can give that up just because that other one is not shifting just yet. Mm-hmm. And I also speak to my clients around this, around like, if you knew that your body was changing, but you just couldn't see it yet. Yeah. If you actually had certainty, even if you just trusted that that's actually happening. Yeah. Could you let that just like be true and just be patient? Yeah. Right. Because we tend to allow that narrative to run of like, oh, well, I don't, like, maybe nothing's happening. Maybe I'm already off track, and maybe it's never going to happen for me. But also, if you could just trust that one metric is actually moving, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. So that being said, in the sense of sort of delving a little bit more into like the food type of sort of side of things, because I know that you have, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, your recipe page, which is just so wholesome. So guys, and we're going to plug Laura's Instas as well, so that you can go and check these out, because they're just absolutely fantastic. And everyone's like, Sheri, you always stick to the same meals. I know, but also I'm trying to venture out. So this is where your page is going to become so useful for me. But if we sort of chat to, in terms of satisfaction and being able to have this slightly more like flexible approach with our food, right? Because again, steering away from chicken and broccoli, we don't have to just have the basic carbs, fats, proteins. We can actually make it a little bit more fun. Yeah. What would be your recommendation for someone that is wanting to increase their levels of sort of satisfaction when it comes to their meals? Do you have sort of like any sort of key things that you focus on to actually, give a bit of joy back into our meals without feeling like, oh my God, I'm off track or anything like that? How do you, what's your mindset on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk about this all day. You can make anything balanced if you have the education, right? Like, at the end of the day, any food is made up of a specific portion of macronutrients, right? So it's like, okay, cool. If I want to make nachos, how am I going to make that balanced? Cool. I'm going to use, corn chips as my carbohydrate. I'm going to use mince as my protein, and as my fat, I'm going to make it like avocado, guacamole. And then for extra fiber, I'm going to add in like a mango salsa. Like, done.
What a vibe. I want some nachos.
And that's it. It's like, okay, cool. Like, the biggest key to sticking to your nutrition is, of course, you've got to enjoy it. And that's like the biggest thing, is people were like, oh, I don't want to eat that. So like, why would I stick to that? So it's like, number one, think about your favorite food. It could be anything. It could be Italian, it could be Mexican, it could be, Indian. And then, okay, cool. That's my cuisine. I know I already love that. How can I then make that balanced? Okay. What are my carbs? What are my fats? What are my proteins? It really can be that simple.
I love that so much. I think like, because we've already sort of spoken to like portion sizes, right? Being able to actually kind of balance out our plate a little bit, which you mentioned earlier. But absolutely, like, I think that's such a key thing that people forget, is actually about going inwards and actually going, what is it that I'm currently craving? Like, actually, what am I currently craving? I think I saw one of your recent reels, like you did like a pad thai, I think, and it looked beautiful. And I was like, this is such a perfect example where it's like, you can, of course, like, so you can get takeout, but also you also don't need to. You can also make something yourself that is actually hitting your cravings, right? You don't have to ignore your cravings. You don't have to fight. You don't have to just like have the rice because that's healthier. No, you can actually have the noodles that you would like. And it comes down to actually balancing your plate correctly, gauging nice portions, and then moving on, because you're actually allowed for this to be your journey and you need to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the principles of intuitive eating, right? Is eating for satisfaction. And that's why it's so important, because satisfaction actually turns off the drive to eat just as much as satiety. So that's why so many people, like, you go out and you eat the lowest calorie option, and then next minute you're home in the bottom of an ice cream tub. It's because, like, yes, while you're full, you weren't quite satisfied. So that's why it's actually important to be making sure that we're incorporating these foods into our day, so that it stops like binge restrict cycles.
100%. I love this so much. Absolutely. What would you say to someone that's like, okay, well, I'm making sure I'm working on my cravings and I'm making sure that I'm, hitting my fullness and I'm, really I'm finishing the day and I know that I'm full. I know that I'm satisfied, but I still want to keep turning towards food. Like I literally just feel like I want to keep picking and snacking. What would be your take on just like your mindset almost around those moments? Let's say it's like right after dinner, you've had your dessert, you're in your range of calories and your portions and all of that, you tick, 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 tick. But there's this like little thought of like, oh, I could just go back for more. What is your take on that?
Yeah, this one sits close to me because I definitely have struggled with a lot of emotional eating in the past. And that's what it always comes down to. It's like, well, if I'm not eating, like if I'm eating because I'm not hungry, then of course it's an emotional reason. So like the first thing always is looking at, well, what is it? Well, what is the emotion first of all? Am I trying to feel right now? Like, is it boredom? Is it stress? Is it sadness? Like, what is the actual emotion? And then like looking myself at a whole, it's like, well, where am I not fulfilling my needs? Where am I not, having fun in my life? Where am I not socializing? Where am I overworking? Where am I not looking after my self-care? Because at the end of the day, it's never about the food, but it's what the food gives us. And that's the thing that we need to give ourselves. And we need to learn how to acknowledge that by not going to food. So that's really what we have to look at.
Beautifully said. Yeah, love that so, so much about how to meet our own needs. And I think, Mike, this is where that curiosity piece that we were talking about earlier, being actually able to go, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. Can I get curious as opposed to being judgmental? Can I actually get curious as to like, okay, why do I feel the need to keep picking right now? And is there, do I need to self-soothe? Do I need to go take a shower? Do I actually feel super lonely and need to go connect with a friend? Do I need to clean my environment? My apartment looks like a mess. Do I like actually getting curious as to what is the catalyst to this moment as to why I'm feeling this way and how can I actually meet that need and be there for myself, and realize that I'm not a bad person for this being a challenge. It's actually going, how can I just be there for myself and learn what that looks like in those moments. I love this. So I'm kind of like going through these kind of key pillars because I feel like you're the way that you coach encompasses so many different areas. If we're sort of chatting then to exercise quickly in terms of because I know so many women, right, and again women in the sense of from the past diets I might have been on or the diet industry in general being like cardio bunnies, right? Being like, I just need to do more steps, need to do more running, need to focus on just shred programs and on HIIT and all this kind of stuff, right? It's very confusing. So what would you say to someone that might be like, I just need to increase my cardio. I need to, do more output as a way to lose weight or things like that. Do you have like sort of like a recommendation as to, how to approach someone that might be wanting to lose weight that has that, I needed to get more steps in, need to shred fat, that kind of mentality right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, first of all, I would always ask them like what their actual goal is. Like, what is your goal? Like, is your goal weight loss or is your goal fat loss? And there's a big difference between weight loss and fat loss when it comes to your exercise routine. Because at the end of the day, you have to look about like exercise. Yeah, it's like one thing, but like there is so many different types of exercise, and like all the different types of exercise is going to give you a different benefit, say, in the body. And it also is going to make you look different. And this is where people, they jump into, because they're running from that undercurrent of like, I have to burn calories in order to lose weight, like because we've conditioned, right? Less food, more exercise. If I just do more, then I'm going to lose weight and then I'm going to look the way that I want. But the problem lies with that is like, well, yeah, if you want to lose weight on the scale and not thinking about fat or muscle percentages, like if you just want to lose weight, yeah, just eat low calories and do heaps of cardio. But what will happen is that you'll ultimately, like your body composition will still be more body fat than muscle. So you're going to look skinny fat. This is something that I'm constantly going through with all my girls. It's like, yeah, I just want to burn more calories and do more cardio, but that like I want to look toned. I'm like, well, in order to look toned, what you actually need to do is you need to build muscle and lose fat. And the other piece of it, like if your goal is just fat loss, right? If you don't actually want a body recomp and your goal is like fat loss, but you're saying weight loss, when you actually want to lose fat and maintain your muscle, in order to achieve that, you also need to prioritize maintaining your muscle, and doing cardio and more steps is going to make you have less muscle. So it's actually moving you further away from your body composition goal. Think about it. It's like an exercise, it's a prescription, like it's a drug prescription. And it's like, okay, cool. If you want to have more muscle and less body fat, then you need to be making sure your exercise routine is in alignment with that. AKA, you need to make sure your hypertrophy training, you're lifting weights, you're applying progressive overload, you're training at the right intensity, you're following a program, right? Like this is what we need to be doing instead of going in and doing a freaking HIIT class that you walk out feeling like dead and not seeing results from.
100%. I love this so much. I love that distinction. Thank you so much for making that distinction, because it is, yeah, it's so important that everyone gets really clear on that. And I think that's really right, where that number on the scale, we need to make it mean a little bit less sometimes, right? Where, when you are just wanting that number on the scale to come down, but also like your body could be completely changing and your muscle to fat ratio could be changing. Like, let's actually look more holistically at, again, coming back to the metrics of success, going, okay, this is one metric. Can I actually look at the other things that might be changing as well? So yeah, getting clear on what your goals are and then making sure that your exercise is in alignment with that. So yeah, you're essentially, so you're not shooting yourself in the foot as well. So that being said, if we're sort of chatting to like consistency as well, right? Because we know, as we mentioned, patience is one thing, but then also being able to have that grit and actually being able to be consistent when it does come to exercise, to our food, to our plans, so that we can achieve our goals. I know that, we spoke to this before we sort of came on to hit record today. But I know that, I see you being someone that is incredibly consistent with your goals and the way that you live your life, despite the fact that you move around so much. For anyone that doesn't know, Laura is, she does so many months remote working overseas and things like that, and very much sort of in that travel lifestyle. How do you specifically remain consistent with your lifestyle when you know that, you could be in Bali 1 month and then the next month you're in Europe and all of these things? How do you stay consistent? What does consistency mean to you?
Yeah, consistency is just like, I just identify as consistent. Like I am a consistent person. So therefore that's just how I live and lead my life. So it's not something that I do. It's more so who I am. So you'll see it in all aspects of my life. Like I'm consistent in the way that I show up for my exercise, in the way that I eat, in the way that it comes down to like taking supplements, for example. Like it's how you do one thing is how you do everything. So that's what I've just done. I've just aligned my being and my identity ultimately as I'm just a consistent person. So therefore, that's how I do everything. So it doesn't matter if I'm in Amsterdam. It doesn't matter if I'm in Canggu. Like I go to the gym. Like that's just what I do. And so therefore, that I make it work.
I love that so much. So do you have sort of certain like non-negotiables? And I think you just kind of spoke to them, like whether it's like with supplements or things like that, non-negotiables every single day that help you sort of keep being sort of quite constant, whether you are in Amsterdam or whether you are in Bali, wherever it is, being able to actually, rely on whether it's like a bit of a routine or things like that. Do you actually have those kind of key pillars in place?
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you asked the question, and I was reflecting on it because I was like, I don't really like maybe to someone else they're a non-negotiable. For me, I don't feel like it's a non-negotiable because it's just like what I do. And that sounds, I don't know if that makes sense or whatever, but like, of course, it's once you know the difference of what it feels like to be consistent, like what it feels like to get stronger, what your energy levels can be like, what you can succeed, like achieve in your life from just nailing consistency. Like building my business and being able to travel remotely has always been like, it was such a massive dream of my mind. Like I remember sitting down and writing in my journal of like literally how it was going to play out. And then because I was able to be consistent, I bring it to real life. So it's like being able, I don't know how to articulate that, but it's like, and that's it. It's just like once you realize that it's not a new thing that you need, but instead it's like literally just show up for the gym 4 times a week, like literally just add protein to your meals. Like that's what it can be. And that's how you get results when you allow it to, because once you're able to ultimately master your mindset, because that's where it comes down to, is when you can really get success in all areas.
I love this so much. Absolutely. And I think, right, the sort of what I pull from that is you actually identifying, as you said, as someone that is consistent. And I think this is right where people can sometimes put a label on themselves as like, I'm not a consistent person. I'm not a disciplined person. And then you end up operating as such because you have this belief about yourself. Whereas instead of being like, actually, I am going to choose to be, and I am now a consistent person. What does that look like? And then having the grit to actually show up and become that in various facets of your life. Something I always sort of speak to as well is like, actually have a look at like other areas of your life. Where else are you actually potentially being quite consistent? And actually, how can you then just bring that into your exercise, your food, your relationship with yourself? Like oftentimes we think that we don't have any consistency, but it's like, actually, do you show up for work every single day and get there before like 10 a.m.? Like probably yes, right? Because you're probably pretty consistent with that area of your life. You're probably pretty good colleague and whatever. Are you pretty consistent with checking in with your family because you actually prioritize your family, your relationships? Probably yes. So actually, how, as opposed to being like, I'm not someone who's consistent, actually, how can you be like, I actually am a consistent person? How can I actually then just bring that into this facet of my life as well? And what does showing up for myself and having that grit look like? And exactly as you said, then as soon as you start to realize just all the incredible outcomes that come from that, how good you can feel, realizing that, coming back to what you said earlier as well about the commitment, it's actually then going, am I committed to actually being this version of myself who is consistent, who is disciplined, who's discerning, who's self-loving, who's self-compassionate? Can I actually choose to be committed to this version of myself and then allow consistency to flow on from that? And consistency feels exactly as you said, like it's almost like easier. It's like easy because it's just, I choose this life for myself. It's not about me trying to be here and then trying to reach up to here. It's like, no, I choose this standard of myself and I don't allow anything else below that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also like there's a big element in learning how to like trust yourself and trust what you want to do instead of what you should do. Because I used to run myself into the ground. Like I should be doing this. I should be training 7 times a week. I should be eating this way. I should be doing that. But then like it never stuck. Like I couldn't be consistent because I was, following something external. And it wasn't until I was able to create that internal, ultimately trust myself, and also with the education around how to actually achieve a result with your food and exercise, right? Like I will say that there is an element of I learned the strategy to success, like it started to work, also creates an addiction to it because you're like, oh my God, like I'm actually getting better and I'm getting results now after trying so fucking hard for so many years, and all of that. So it's like, it's having the right strategy for you, and also really important in learning how to trust and discern like how you're feeling, and allowing yourself, like if you need to have rest, you can have rest. If you need to give yourself a kick up the bum, give yourself a kick up the bum, right? It's learning how to know the difference, and also having like, I don't know if you're much into like feminine masculine energy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because it's like having that masculine structure, but then still allowing yourself to have trust and feminine flow amongst all of it, so that you can, intertwine, I like to say, and like, still get a result, but in a non-linear way, and allow that, most importantly, like no judgment, get rid of the shames of the right and wrong, and allow that to be your okay to get you to where you want to be.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Having that masculine energy within you to be like, okay, yeah, I need to kick up the bum, and actually, being quite discerning and almost like that element of discipline, but then also being able to go, okay, but also is there these moments where I actually might need to flex a little bit and actually might need to, give myself some rest, and that's not meaning that I'm off track or I'm not consistent. It's actually that I actually need to give this to myself. And I always have this analogy, right, again, about like taking your foot off the pedal a little bit. That doesn't mean that you're off the pedal and then, oh my gosh, like I'm not moving anywhere. It's like, can you actually just release the pedal just a little bit? Because what does that allow? It allows room for you to then put it back down, and trusting that like you can ebb and flow. And that, like, I look at that as being consistent. It's like knowing how to ebb and flow, and again, like learn about yourself. Because for some people, they can ebb and flow within like almost like weekly periods. For some people, it's like day to day, they feel quite different. So being able to learn about what works for you, when do you need it, ebb and flow, and be a bit agile, as well as then have that semi-rigid sort of structure as well. So that being said, just to sort of wrap up, Laura, is there anything that you would like love to say to someone who is maybe at the beginning of their journey in terms of healing their relationship with food, and maybe finally doing this time different than how they've ever done it before? They want to let go of diets and actually come to the table and be like, yeah, you know what, I'm actually ready to actually have a new approach, be there for myself, learn how to self-manage better, and finally achieve my goals. Is there anything that you would like love to say to, whether it's like a past version of you, or like to that woman who maybe feels a bit overwhelmed but knows that she really wants things to be different this time around?
Yeah, I think a big thing in all of it is like, know that it's going to be fucking hard, but it's going to be fucking worth it. Like it's such a bumpy ride, and that's why I always have a coach, right? Because like my experience I've found it from my own relationship with food and body, like I've transitioned those same patterns into my business. Like it's crazy how I've seen that, and then I've had to learn how to let go of all the patterns all over again, because they've just all been triggered again. So it's like, know that like it absolutely is possible for you, and you're gonna fucking kill it. However, it's going to be fucking terrifying, and know that that's okay. It's okay to feel fear, but it's the difference between allowing that fear to continue to control you for the rest of your life, or being able to take action, take radical responsibility, and create what you want, because everything you want is always going to be on the other side of fear. Like I'm still learning that right now. Like running a business is like, it seems like, oh, glorified and all things, but it's fucking hard. Like the mindset shit that I have to go through is like, you know, and it's right. You see it on social media, but like at the end of the day, like it's, we have to push through the hard things in order to be successful. And it's about having the courage. I think the most important thing, have courage, because you will get there.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Laura. Where can people come and find you on Instagram to get more of your message?
Yes, so I'm on 2 places. I love that for me. So hate it as well. No. Fit and Free Academy is all the places about how to heal your relationship with food and achieve body recomposition. So build muscle, lose fat. And then Fit Foodie Recipes is where I share all my amazing food. So they're the 2 places.
Amazing. And you also have your own podcast as well. Yes,
the Fit and Free podcast. I just turned 1, which I'm like so excited for.
Very exciting. Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, is that the best place to come over to your Instagram, either DM you, or do you have a link in bio that they can chat to you about?
Yes, come chat, come say hey, and tell me that you listen to the podcast. I love it when you guys reach out and say, yeah, I listen to you, and I'm like, yeah, cool, love that.
Key takeaways, 100%. Tell us what they are. Thank you so much, Laura. Honestly, your message is just so aligned, and I have wanted to have you on the podcast for such a long time, because I absolutely love your integration of nutrition and exercise and all of the sort of key fundamentals, as well as the key importance of having your mindset in place and actually learning about yourself so that you can actually create a really sustainable lifestyle. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing your mission as well. I absolutely love it.
Thank you.
The number one challenge that all my clients face before we start working together is a lack of clarity on how much and what to eat to lose weight. Often they are making 2 huge mistakes: constantly trying to skip meals or eat under 1,600 calories. Secondly, only allowing themselves bad foods like chocolate on the weekend, but end up binging, all to tell themselves they're going to start again on Monday. If you feel like you have tried every diet under the sun and still can't figure out what to eat to achieve your weight loss goals, take my free 2-minute quiz. You can find the link in the show notes down below, and it will help you figure out exactly what you're doing wrong with your nutrition and exercise, and exactly what to do to fix it, so that you can finally be confident in your body and achieve your weight loss goals.